My husband died with a secret so devastating, it nearly destroyed everything I thought I knew about our 24-year marriage. 2 weeks after his funeral, his attorney handed me a key to a property I didn't know existed. A property Marcus had specifically forbidden me from ever visiting during his lifetime. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was what I found when I finally drove through those gates. What I discovered in the farmhouse. What his family was willing to do to keep me from learning the truth. My name is Lorraine, and this is the story of how my husband's death revealed a conspiracy that began before I was even born. Never go to Blackwood Estate, Lorraine. Promise me. Those words, spoken with an intensity that bordered on fear, were among the few absolute demands Marcus ever made in our marriage. My husband wasn't a controlling man. He didn't care if I went out with friends, traveled alone, or made major decisions without consulting him first. But about Blackwood Estate, he was immovable. I had always assumed it was trauma. Marcus rarely spoke about his childhood in Northern California, and when he did, his face would darken with something I couldn't quite identify. Pain, shame, rage, maybe all three. So I promised. And for 24 years, I kept that promise. Then Marcus died. The heart attack came without warning on a Tuesday morning. He was making coffee, humming along to the radio, and then he just collapsed. The paramedics said he was likely gone before he hit the kitchen floor. 52 years old. No prior symptoms. No chance to say goodbye. At his funeral, I stood numb while our daughter Jasmine sobbed beside me. I shook hands with colleagues from his tech company, accepted casseroles from neighbors, and mechanically thanked people for condolences I couldn't quite process. What I didn't expect was the mystery that would begin exactly 2 weeks later. Mrs. Williams, there's one additional item. The attorney, Mr. Patterson, slid a wooden box across his mahogany desk. Inside lay a brass key attached to a hand-carved raven keychain and a sealed envelope with my name in Marcus's precise handwriting. My throat tightened. What is this? 3 years ago, your husband purchased a property in Mendocino County. According to his instructions, you were only to be informed after his passing. Mr. Patterson adjusted his wire-rimmed glasses. The deed has been transferred to your name. All taxes paid for the next decade. The room tilted slightly. A property? What property? It's called Blackwood Estate. Apparently, it was his family's ancestral home, though records show it changed hands multiple times before he repurchased it. Blackwood Estate. The forbidden place. The source of Marcus's childhood nightmares. The property he'd made me swear never to visit. There's something else you should know. Mr. Patterson lowered his voice. The property has become contested. Mr. Williams's extended family has already filed legal objections to the transfer, and there have been numerous purchase inquiries from development companies. Why would developers want an old family estate? Because, Mrs. Williams, the property sits on 400 acres of pristine coastal land. Current market estimates put its value somewhere north of $40 million. I couldn't breathe. $40 million? We'd lived comfortably on Marcus's salary and my income as a freelance graphic designer, but we were hardly wealthy. How had he afforded to buy a $40 million estate, and why keep it secret? My hands trembled as I opened the envelope. My dearest Lorraine, if you're reading this, I've left you too soon. I'm sorry for so many things, but mostly for the secrets. Blackwood Estate is yours now. I've spent the last 3 years transforming it from the nightmare of my childhood into something that honors what we built together. I know I made you promise never to go there. I release you from that promise now. In fact, I'm begging you to go. Just once. Before you decide what to do with it. In the main house's study, you'll find a laptop. The password is the coordinates where I proposed to you. I love you, Lorraine. More than you ever knew. Marcus. I clutched the letter, tears blurring the elegant script. Even in death, Marcus was cryptic, revealing just enough to pull me forward while keeping the full truth tantalizingly out of reach. "I need to see this place," I said finally. Mr. Patterson nodded. "I assumed you would, but Mrs. Williams, I must warn you. Marcus's family is quite determined. His cousins specifically have retained aggressive legal counsel. They claim he wasn't mentally competent when he made the purchase." "That's absurd. Marcus was brilliant right up until—" "Nevertheless, they've filed the paperwork. Given the property's value, this could become complicated very quickly." I tucked the key into my purse, a strange resolve settling over me. "I'm going to California. Today. Before we go any further into Lorraine's story, can I ask you one thing? Just one. Hit that subscribe button right now. I put my heart and soul into every story I create. Your subscription is what fuels me to keep bringing you these deep dives into human mystery, betrayal, and redemption. So please, like this video right now. Drop your comment below. Tell me where you're watching from. Your city? Your country? Anywhere in the world. Are you listening while driving? Cooking dinner? Trying to fall asleep? I want to know you're out there, because that's what makes this community special. Now, let's get back to Lorraine and the secrets waiting for her at Blackwood Estate. 48 hours later, after hastily packed bags and a red-eye flight, I stood before towering iron gates bearing the name Blackwood in Gothic letters. Beyond stretched a property that stole my breath. This wasn't the decaying family estate I'd imagined. The driveway curved through perfectly maintained grounds. Ancient oak trees framed manicured lawns. In the distance, perched on a bluff overlooking the Pacific Ocean, stood a Victorian mansion that belonged in an architecture magazine. Marcus had renovated everything. But why? And with what money? The key turned smoothly. As I drove up the winding path, my heart hammered against my ribs. Every shadow seemed to hide watching eyes. Every flutter of birds in the trees felt like a warning. The mansion was breathtaking. 3 stories of restored Victorian splendor, with a wraparound porch and floor-to-ceiling windows that captured the ocean view. Fresh paint. New landscaping. Solar panels discreetly integrated into the roof design. This place had been loved. Recently. Obsessively. My hands shook as I inserted the key into the front door. The lock clicked. The door swung open, and I stepped into my husband's secret world. The entry hall opened into a 2-story great room with exposed beam ceilings and a river rock fireplace. Afternoon light poured through the western windows, illuminating photographs, hundreds of them. Every wall, every surface, covered with framed photographs. Not of Marcus's childhood or his family. Of me. Me at 23, the day we met at that coffee shop in Seattle. Me on our wedding day, laughing as rain ruined my carefully styled hair. Me pregnant with Jasmine, glowing and terrified. Me at 45, silver streaking my black hair, confident in ways my younger self never was. But there were also photographs I'd never seen. Marcus had hired photographers to capture me when I didn't know I was being watched. Candid shots of me working in my home studio, teaching Jasmine to ride a bike, reading on the beach during that anniversary trip to Mexico. 24 years of loving surveillance, preserved forever in silver frames. A sob caught in my throat. This wasn't creepy. This was devotion on a scale I couldn't comprehend. Then I saw the laptop, positioned on a desk by the window, a single white rose laid across its closed lid. Before I could take another step, the crunch of tires on gravel announced a new arrival. Through the window, I watched a black Range Rover pull up behind my rental car. 3 people emerged. 2 men in expensive suits and a woman in a designer dress, her platinum hair pulled into a severe bun. They had the unmistakable air of people who believed they owned the place I was standing in. The Blackwood family had arrived, and from their expressions, they weren't here to welcome me. The sharp rap on the door echoed through the great room like a gunshot. "Mrs. Williams!" a man's voice, cultured and cold. "We know you're in there. We should talk." I remained motionless, instinct screaming at me to be cautious. Marcus's vague warnings about his family suddenly felt very real. "Lorraine." The woman's voice now, saccharine sweet. "I'm Victoria Blackwood, Marcus's cousin. We're family, dear. There's no need for this hostility." Family. The word tasted bitter. If they were family, why had Marcus spent 3 years renovating this estate in secret? Why forbid me from coming here while he was alive? I moved to the laptop instead, entering the password 476062N, 122.3321W. The exact coordinates of the lighthouse where Marcus had proposed on a foggy November evening. The screen came to life immediately, opening to a folder labeled, "For Lorraine, start here." Inside were video files, hundreds of them, each dated. The first was marked simply, "Day 1, if you made it here." The pounding on the door grew more insistent. With trembling fingers, I clicked play. Marcus's face filled the screen. Not the gaunt, tired version from his final months, but healthy, vibrant. This had been recorded at least a year ago. "Hello, my love." His smile was sad and loving. "If you're watching this, then I'm gone, and you've come to Blackwood despite everything I said to keep you away." His eyes glistened. "I should have told you the truth while I was alive. Should have trusted you with the whole story. But I was a coward, Lorraine. Afraid you'd see me differently. Afraid you'd leave me if you knew what I really was." What he really was? What did that mean? "I have a video for every day of your first year without me," Marcus continued. 365 days of me explaining everything I should have told you. Starting with why I bought back the estate I swore I'd never set foot in again. The banging outside stopped. Through the window, I watched the trio retreat to their Range Rover, retrieving documents and conferring with aggressive gestures. Marcus's video continued. 3 years ago, I was diagnosed with hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. The doctors gave me 2 to 5 years. I chose not to tell you or Jasmine because I wanted our final years to be about living, not dying. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. He'd known. For 3 years, he'd carried the knowledge of his approaching death while I remained obliviously happy. "I know you're furious right now," he said, as if reading my thoughts. "You have every right to be. But please, keep watching. Keep listening. Because the diagnosis isn't the real secret, Lorraine. It's just the beginning." The video ended, freezing on his sorrowful expression. Outside, the woman, Victoria, was on her phone, her face animated with triumph as she ended the call. In the bottom drawer of the desk, I found a blue folder labeled Legal Protection. Inside were documents, deeds, notarized statements, certified records of Marcus's purchase of Blackwood Estate from the Blackwood Family Trust 3 years ago. He'd bought it legally, paid market value, and had the paperwork to prove it. A new vehicle was coming up the driveway. A sheriff's cruiser with Mendocino County markings. The family had called law enforcement. Marcus had anticipated this too, I realized with growing awe. Every folder in the desk was labeled, organized, and comprehensive. If they bring police. If they file injunctions. If they threaten Jasmine. My grief-stricken, secretive husband had waged a legal war from beyond the grave, protecting me from enemies I didn't even know I had. The sheriff's deputy knocked, more professionally than the family had. "Mrs. Williams? I'm Deputy Garcia. I need to speak with you regarding a property dispute." I took a deep breath, grabbed the blue folder, and went to face whatever came next. As I reached for the door handle, my phone buzzed with a text from Jasmine. "Mom, where are you?" "Marcus's cousin Victoria just called me. She says you're in California causing problems with his estate? What's going on?" So they'd already reached my daughter, already begun working to turn her against me. The war Marcus had prepared for was beginning. And I was about to learn that my husband's secrets went far deeper than a hidden estate and a concealed illness. Okay, I need to pause here for just a moment because I'm dying to know. What would you do if you discovered your husband had been hiding a $40 million estate from you? Would you be angry, grateful, suspicious? And what about Marcus's family showing up like that, calling the police, trying to claim what's legally yours? Would you fight? Would you run? Would you try to make peace with people who clearly see you as an obstacle? Drop your thoughts in the comments right now. I read every single one, and honestly, your perspectives always make me think about these stories in new ways. Are you Team Lorraine, believing Marcus had good reasons for his secrets? Or are you skeptical, thinking maybe his family has a point? Tell me below. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now so you never miss stories like this. Now let's get back to Lorraine's nightmare, because what happens next changes everything. Deputy Garcia was professional but clearly uncomfortable with being pulled into a family dispute. He examined my documents with increasing skepticism toward the Blackwood family's claims. "These appear to be in order, Mrs. Williams," he said finally. "Clear title transfer, properly notarized, certified bank records showing your husband's purchase of the property 3 years ago." He turned to Victoria and her companions. "I don't see grounds for removing Mrs. Williams from her own property." Victoria's porcelain face cracked with rage. "This is absurd. That property has been in the Blackwood family for 5 generations. Marcus had no right." "Actually, ma'am, according to these documents, your family trust sold the property to Mr. Williams willingly in 2020. If you have evidence of fraud or coercion, you'll need to pursue it through civil courts." As the deputy ushered them off my property, Victoria turned back with a smile that chilled me to the bone. "Enjoy it while you can, Lorraine. You have no idea what you're sitting on, or what it's going to cost you to keep it." The threat hung in the air long after their Range Rover disappeared down the driveway. I had barely closed the door when my phone rang. Jasmine's name flashed on the screen. "Mom, what the hell is going on?" My 27-year-old daughter's voice cracked with confusion and anger. Victoria Blackwood just spent an hour telling me about Dad's breakdown, how he bought this estate while having some kind of mental health crisis, how you're trying to steal from his family. "Jasmine, stop." I sank onto the sofa, suddenly exhausted. "None of that is true. Your father left this property to me. Legally, deliberately. And his family is lying." "Then why did he hide it from us? Why all the secrets?" She was crying now. "Did you even know Dad was sick? Victoria said he had a heart condition for years. Is that true?" The pain in her voice broke my heart. "Yes, baby, it's true. He was diagnosed 3 years ago. He didn't tell us because he wanted our final time together to be normal, not overshadowed by death." "That's not right, Mom." Jasmine's voice broke. "I had a right to know. I could have said goodbye. I could have—" Her voice dissolved into sobs. "I know. You're right. I'm angry about it too." I wiped my own tears. "But Jasmine, there's more to the story. Things your father documented. Things his family doesn't want us to know." "Like what?" "Like why he really bought this place. Like what's actually on this land that makes it worth $40 million. Like the truth about his family and why he cut ties with them decades ago." A long pause. $40 million? At minimum. And his cousins want to take it all. That's why they're calling you, trying to turn you against me. Divide and conquer. Another pause, longer this time. "Mom, I don't know what to believe anymore." "Then come here," I said suddenly, making the decision as I spoke. "See this place for yourself. Watch the videos your father made. Learn the truth directly from him, not from strangers who have everything to gain by lying to both of us." "Videos? Dad made videos?" "Hundreds of them. One for every day of my first year without him. Messages explaining everything." My voice broke. "He loved us so much, Jasmine. Everything he did, every secret he kept. It was all to protect us. I heard her shaky breath. I'll book a flight tonight. After ending the call with Jasmine, I spent the rest of the afternoon exploring Blackwood Estate systematically, my designer's eye noting every detail Marcus had poured into the renovation. The mansion had 6 bedrooms, each decorated with thoughtful elegance. The master suite overlooked the ocean, with a private balcony and an attached bathroom that could have graced a luxury spa. But it was one particular room on the 2nd floor that stopped me in my tracks. A fully equipped art studio. Floor-to-ceiling windows flooded the space with perfect northern light. Professional-grade easels stood ready, drawers filled with every supply an artist could want. Oil paints, watercolors, pastels, brushes of every size, canvases stacked neatly in the corner. I hadn't painted in 15 years. After Jasmine was born, I'd shifted my creative energy into graphic design, more lucrative, more practical, easier to manage around motherhood. My painting supplies had been boxed up, stored in the garage, eventually donated when we moved to a smaller house. Marcus had noticed. Of course he had. On an easel by the window sat a single canvas, blank except for 4 words written in Marcus's handwriting at the bottom. Paint your new beginning. I sank into the chair before the easel, overwhelmed. My husband had given me not just financial security, but the space to rediscover a passion I'd abandoned, the freedom to become who I'd once dreamed of being. Tears streamed down my face as I touched the blank canvas, imagining the possibilities it held. A soft chime from my pocket interrupted the moment. The laptop in the study. I'd left it open downstairs, and it had just alerted me to a new notification. Racing back down, I found a pop-up message on the screen. If you've discovered the art studio, watch day 2 now. I clicked the video file. Marcus appeared again, this time seated in the very art studio I'd just left. Hello again, my love. I hope you found your surprise. He gestured to the space around him. I bought this estate for many reasons, but this room was the first thing I planned. Before I even made an offer, I walked through this empty house and knew. This space, with these windows, this light, this would be where Lorraine paints again. His expression grew serious. You gave up so much for our family. Your art, your dreams. You never complained, never threw it in my face. But I noticed. Every time you'd see a painting in a gallery and your fingers would move unconsciously, like you were holding a brush. Every time an art supply store would make you pause just a little too long. I hadn't realized he'd been watching so carefully. This estate isn't just about money or property or family history, Marcus continued. It's about giving you back what you sacrificed. The time and space to create. To be Lorraine the artist, not just Lorraine the mother, or Lorraine the designer, or Lorraine the widow. He leaned closer to the camera. My diagnosis taught me that life is shorter than we think. We don't have time for someday. If you want to paint, paint. If you want to travel, travel. If you want to sit on that balcony and watch the ocean for hours doing absolutely nothing, do it. The video shifted. Marcus standing now, walking to the window. There's something else you need to know about this property. Something that explains why my family wants it so badly and why I fought so hard to keep them away from it. He turned back to the camera. Walk down to the beach, Lorraine. To the cove directly below the house. There's a path from the garden gate. At low tide, you'll see a cave entrance. Inside, you'll find the second part of my gift to you. The video ended. I glanced at my watch. According to the tide chart I'd noticed in the kitchen, another detail Marcus had thought of, low tide would be in 30 minutes. The path down to the beach was steep but well-maintained, with sturdy railings and even lighting for evening walks. Marcus had thought of everything. The beach itself was pristine, untouched except for my footprints in the sand. Private property meant no tourists, no crowds, just the sound of waves and seabirds. The cove was exactly where Marcus had indicated, a curved inlet protected by rock formations on either side. And there, just becoming accessible as the tide receded, was the cave entrance. I hesitated at the mouth of the cave, suddenly aware of how isolated I was. If something happened, if the tide came in faster than expected, if the cave was unstable. But Marcus had sent me here. He wouldn't put me in danger. I stepped inside. The cave was deeper than it appeared from outside, extending back into the cliff face. But it wasn't dark. LED lights had been installed along the walls, motion-activated, flooding the space with gentle illumination as I entered. And there, in a widened chamber about 50 feet in, was something I never could have imagined. A workshop. No, more than that. A gallery. The walls were lined with paintings. My paintings. Every piece I'd ever created, including ones I thought had been lost or destroyed. Marcus had been collecting them for years, preserving them. And now they were here, professionally framed and displayed in this secret underground space. But that wasn't all. In the center of the chamber stood a large table covered with architectural plans, geological surveys, and legal documents. I moved closer, studying the papers in the LED light. Property surveys showing not just Blackwood Estate, but the surrounding coastline for miles. Geological reports indicating valuable mineral deposits, not oil, but rare earth elements used in technology manufacturing. Environmental impact studies, development proposals. And at the center of it all, a handwritten note from Marcus. This is what they really want. Not the house, not sentimentality. The land beneath this estate contains deposits worth hundreds of millions, possibly billions. I discovered it by accident during the renovation, when I hired geologists to ensure the cliff was stable. I've spent 3 years ensuring they can never touch it. The property is yours, completely and legally. But more importantly, I've structured conservation easements that prevent any mining or development for 50 years. The land is protected, the coastline is preserved. Victoria and her brothers can't touch it, no matter how they try. You're not just inheriting wealth, Lorraine. You're inheriting stewardship of something precious and irreplaceable. I'm trusting you to decide its future, knowing you'll choose wisely. Your paintings are here because this was always meant to be your place, your sanctuary, your inspiration. The cave where you'll create your greatest work, surrounded by echoes of your past and possibilities for your future. I love you. Always have. Always will. Marcus. I sank onto the bench he'd placed there, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what he'd done. The wealth was almost incomprehensible, but more than that was the trust. He'd placed the future of this entire coastline in my hands. My phone buzzed. A text from Jasmine. Just landed in San Francisco, renting a car. Be there in 4 hours. Mom, I'm scared and excited and confused, but mostly, I want to understand. I texted back. Me too, baby. Me too. Drive safe. We'll watch Dad's videos together. As I made my way back up the cliff path, the sun setting over the Pacific, I thought about Marcus's secrets. Yes, he'd hidden things. Yes, he'd made unilateral decisions that affected all of us. But every choice had been made with love. Every secret had been kept to protect us. Every plan had been designed to give us not just security, but freedom. The Forbidden Estate was becoming something else entirely. A gift of staggering generosity, wrapped in mystery, delivered through grief, and offering a future I was only beginning to imagine. Jasmine arrived just after 10 p.m., exhausted from travel but too wired to rest. She stood in the great room, slowly turning to take in the photographs of me that covered every surface, her expression moving from confusion to wonder to tears. "He really loved you," she whispered finally. "I mean, I knew he did, but this is something else. Come here, baby." I pulled her into a hug, both of us crying now. "There's so much to show you, so much he wanted you to understand." We stayed up until 3 in the morning, watching Marcus's videos together. He'd made several specifically for Jasmine, anticipating questions she'd have, addressing fears he knew would surface, explaining his choices with the patience and love that had defined his fatherhood. "I'm sorry I doubted you," Jasmine said as the last video ended. Victoria was so convincing. She had photos of Dad as a kid, stories about the family, this whole narrative about you being an outsider who didn't understand their history. "She's a professional manipulator," I replied gently. "Your father warned me about her specifically. Said she was the most dangerous of all his cousins because she believed her own lies." "What happens now?" "Now?" I stood, stretching my stiff back. "Now we decide what we want to do with this place. Your father left it to both of us, really. This is our legacy to shape. Can I see the cave? The paintings?" I checked the tide chart. "Tomorrow morning, first thing. For now, sleep. You need rest, and we need clear heads for what comes next." But sleep didn't come easily for either of us. The weight of Marcus's gift, the magnitude of the decisions ahead, the lingering threat of the Blackwood family. It all swirled through my mind as I lay in the master bedroom, listening to the ocean through the open window. Around 4 a.m., a sound jerked me fully awake. Car engines, multiple vehicles coming up the driveway. I moved to the window and saw 3 trucks, unmarked, pulling up to the house. Men began emerging, carrying equipment I couldn't quite make out in the darkness. My phone was in my hand immediately, dialing 911, when I saw one of the men look directly at my window. He raised something, a camera with a telephoto lens. Not an attack. Surveillance. The Blackwood family was documenting my presence here, gathering evidence for their legal challenge, and demonstrating that they weren't giving up. By the time Deputy Garcia arrived 20 minutes later, the trucks had vanished, but they'd made their point. This wasn't over. "Mrs. Williams," Deputy Garcia said as I showed him the security footage from cameras I hadn't even known existed until Marcus's instructions told me where to find them. "This is harassment. You can file charges." "Will charges stop them?" He hesitated. "Honestly, people with the resources the Blackwood family has, they'll find ways around restraining orders. They'll hire the best lawyers, exploit every loophole, and make your life hell while technically staying within the law." "Then what do you suggest?" "Fight back, but not in ways they expect." After he left, Jasmine and I spent the morning going through every document Marcus had left. The legal protections were comprehensive, but the Blackwoods were already testing their limits, probing for weaknesses. "Mom, look at this." Jasmine held up a folder marked "Nuclear Option." Inside were documents I recognized from my years of graphic design work, branding materials, marketing plans, development proposals. But these weren't for Blackwood Estate. They were for the Blackwood Legacy Foundation. Marcus had created an entire blueprint for transforming the estate into a nonprofit conservation and arts center. The rare earth minerals would be left unmined, the coastline preserved in perpetuity, and the mansion converted into artist residencies and environmental education programs. The plan was brilliant. By establishing a foundation, we'd remove the property from private ownership entirely. The Blackwoods couldn't contest what didn't exist as an inheritable asset. And more importantly, Marcus had already secured commitments from major donors and conservation groups, pending only my signature to activate. "He really thought of everything," Jasmine murmured, reading through the business plan. "Not everything," I corrected. "He left room for us to make choices. See here, he has 3 different operational models outlined, each with different focuses. We get to decide which direction to take." We spent the day exploring those options, arguing good-naturedly about priorities, discovering that we shared Marcus's vision more than either of us had expected. By evening, we'd sketched out our own version, blending his ideas with our own. But first, we needed to deal with the Blackwood family directly. I called Victoria myself, inviting her and her brothers to the estate for a meeting. She agreed with barely concealed triumph, clearly believing I was ready to negotiate surrender. They arrived the next afternoon, 3 cars this time, bringing not just family, but their attorneys, accountants, and what appeared to be a geologist of their own. Jasmine and I met them in the great room, professional and calm. I'd dressed in one of the designer suits Marcus had bought me for gallery openings I'd never attended. Armor for this battle. "Victoria, gentlemen," I gestured to the seats we'd arranged. "Thank you for coming." "We appreciate your willingness to be reasonable," Victoria began, her smile sharp. "This property dispute has been distressing for everyone. We're prepared to make a very generous offer." "I'm not here to negotiate a sale," I interrupted gently. "I'm here to inform you of my decision regarding Blackwood Estate's future." The room tensed. Victoria's smile faltered. "As of this morning, I've signed papers establishing the Blackwood Legacy Foundation, a nonprofit organization dedicated to coastal conservation and arts education. The estate, the land, and all associated mineral rights have been donated to this foundation, with conservation easements preventing any development or mining for the next century." Stunned silence. "You can't do that," one of the brothers finally sputtered. "This is family property." "Was family property," I corrected. "Your family sold it to my husband, legally and willingly. He then gifted it to me, also legally, and I've now donated it. All perfectly legal, all properly documented, all completely irreversible." Victoria's face had gone pale. "The mineral rights alone are worth hundreds of millions, yes, which is why the major conservation groups I've partnered with were so enthusiastic about protecting this coastline from exploitation." I slid folders across to each of them. "You're welcome to challenge this in court, but you should know that environmental law in California heavily favors conservation easements, and the foundation has already secured support from 3 different state agencies." Their geologist was speed-reading through the documents, his expression growing increasingly grim as he confirmed what I was telling them. "There's one more thing," Jasmine added, her voice steady and strong. "Dad left detailed records of every attempt your family made to defraud him over the years. Tax evasion, forged documents, embezzlement. The statute of limitations hasn't expired on all of it." She placed another folder on the table. "We have no interest in pursuing criminal charges. But if you continue to harass us, to contest my father's clearly stated wishes, or to interfere with the Foundation's work, these documents will be turned over to federal investigators." Victoria's hands trembled as she opened the folder. Whatever she saw there drained the fight out of her completely. "Marcus always was smarter than the rest of us," she said finally, her voice hollow. "Even from the grave, he's still winning." "This isn't about winning," I replied quietly. "It's about honoring his vision and protecting something precious. He gave me a choice, and I've made it. Not out of spite, but out of love for this land and what it represents." They left without another word, defeat evident in their slumped shoulders and silent vehicles disappearing down the driveway. Jasmine and I stood on the porch, watching them go. "Did we just win?" she asked. "We just chose a different game entirely," I replied. "And yes, I think your father would be proud." 6 months later, the Blackwood Legacy Foundation officially opened its doors. The mansion's bedrooms had been converted into artist studios, hosting 6 residents at a time for 3-month fellowships. The grounds offered nature education programs for local schools, and the beach, the cave, and the coastal lands were protected for generations to come. I'd taken the first artist residency myself, spending 3 months painting in the studio Marcus had designed for me. The series I created, Inheritance, explored themes of loss, discovery, and transformation. It would debut at a San Francisco gallery in the fall, my first solo exhibition in 20 years. Jasmine had taken a leave of absence from her marketing firm to serve as the foundation's interim director. Watching her negotiate with donors, coordinate with environmental agencies, and manage the complexities of nonprofit administration, I saw Marcus in every gesture, every thoughtful decision. We still watched his videos, though less regularly now. 365 days of messages, and we'd made it through nearly all of them. The final video, marked Day 365, the last message, sat unwatched on the laptop, both of us reluctant to reach the end of this daily connection with him. One evening, as we sat on the balcony watching the sunset paint the Pacific in shades of gold and rose, Jasmine broke our comfortable silence. "Do you think we should watch it? Dad's final video?" I considered this. "Are you ready?" "I don't know if I'll ever be ready to say goodbye to him again." She wiped at her eyes. "But maybe that's the point. Maybe we're not supposed to be ready." We went inside together, opened the laptop, and clicked on the final file. Marcus appeared on screen, seated in the same chair where he'd recorded the first video, but the difference was stark. This had been filmed much later, perhaps only weeks before his death. He looked tired, thinner, but his eyes held peace. "Hello, my loves." His voice was softer now, but still warm. "If you're watching this, then you've made it through a full year. Jasmine, you're 28 now. Lorraine, you've survived the hardest year of your life." He smiled gently. "I wish I could be there to see what you've become, what you've built with the gifts I left you. But I think I already know. You've exceeded every expectation, haven't you? Because that's who you are. That's who you've always been. I've spent this entire year talking to you through these videos, explaining my choices, justifying my secrets. But here at the end, I want to say something simpler." He leaned forward, his expression intense with love. "Thank you. Thank you for loving me when I was difficult. Thank you for building a life with me. Thank you for raising our daughter to be strong and brilliant and kind. Thank you for seeing the best in me, even when I couldn't see it in myself." Tears streamed down both our faces as he continued. "The estate, the foundation, the financial security, those are just things, Lorraine. The real inheritance is what we built together. 24 years of partnership, of love, of choosing each other every single day. That's what lives on, not in property or money, but in who you've become and who you'll continue to be." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "I kept secrets, and I know that hurt you. But here's the truth I can finally say. I was never hiding from you. I was hiding from my own fear. Fear of being vulnerable. Fear of being a burden. Fear that if you saw how broken I was inside, how damaged by my childhood, how terrified of dying, you'd love me less. But you never would have, would you? That's the thing I understand now. Too late, but finally clear. You loved all of me, even the parts I was afraid to show you." He smiled through his own tears. "So here's my final gift, my last piece of advice. Don't make my mistake. Whatever comes next in your life, whatever new chapters you write, live them openly. Love boldly. Let people see you completely, flaws and fears and all. Because that vulnerability, that honesty, that's where real connection lives." Marcus stood then, walking to the window we recognized as the master bedroom, the same view I'd gazed at every morning for 6 months. This estate was never just about saving you financially or giving you a place to paint. It was about showing you that you deserve beauty, space, freedom, and possibility. Not someday. Now. Always. He turned back to the camera one final time. "I love you both. I'm so proud of the women you are and the women you're becoming. And I'm not really gone, you know. I'm in every sunset over that ocean, in every painting Lorraine creates, in every decision Jasmine makes with integrity and wisdom, in the land we've protected and the lives the foundation will touch." His final words were barely a whisper. "Live well, love deeply, create boldly, and know that somewhere, somehow, I'm watching with absolute pride and endless love." The screen went black. Jasmine and I sat in silence, holding hands, letting the grief wash over us one final time. But it was different now. Not the acute, devastating pain of fresh loss, but something gentler, bittersweet. A sadness mixed with gratitude. He really did think of everything, Jasmine said eventually. Except one thing, I replied, an idea crystallizing in my mind. What's that? He told us to live boldly, but he never considered that we might want to share his story. To let other people know about the man who loved so completely that he orchestrated an entire legacy from beyond the grave. I looked at my daughter, seeing the same spark of recognition in her eyes. What if we tell his story? The Foundation could use it, not to exploit his memory, but to inspire others, to show what's possible when you love without reservation. Jasmine nodded slowly. A book, maybe? Or a documentary? Or both? I felt energy returning, purpose crystallizing. Marcus gave us this platform, these resources. What if we use them not just to preserve this land, but to preserve his message? That love is the greatest legacy we can leave? Over the following months, we began that project. I wrote while Jasmine organized interviews with people Marcus had touched throughout his life, his colleagues who remembered his quiet generosity, the contractors he'd hired for the renovation who'd been amazed by his attention to detail, environmental scientists who'd consulted on the conservation easements and been moved by his commitment to stewardship over profit. And slowly, a portrait emerged of a man more complex and beautiful than even I had fully known. Marcus the engineer, precise and methodical. Marcus the son, damaged but determined not to perpetuate his family's toxic patterns. Marcus the husband, loving in ways both conventional and extraordinary. Marcus the father, teaching through example rather than lecture. The Blackwood family never challenged us again. Victoria, we later learned, had quietly resigned from her position at the family's investment firm. One of her brothers had entered rehab. The other had moved to Europe. Perhaps Marcus's final exposure of their corruption had prompted some soul-searching. Or perhaps they'd simply realized they'd lost. Either way, they left us in peace. So let me ask you this, and I really want to know your thoughts. Would you have the courage to do what Lorraine did? To walk away from potentially hundreds of millions in personal wealth to protect something larger than yourself? To honor your husband's vision even when his choices had hurt you? And what about Marcus? Was he wrong to keep his illness secret? To make all these plans without consulting Lorraine or Jasmine? Or was he the ultimate example of selfless love, protecting his family in the only way he knew how? I think about this story a lot, about the fine line between protection and control, about whether secrets kept out of love are still betrayals, about what it means to truly honor someone's memory. How would you feel if you discovered the person you loved had built an entire secret world for you? Beautiful and generous, but created without your knowledge or consent. Would you feel cherished or controlled? Let me know in the comments below. Share your honest thoughts. This is a judgment-free zone. I want to hear all perspectives. And if this story moved you, if it made you think about love and legacy and the complexity of human relationships, please share it. Send it to someone who needs to hear about Lorraine's strength. Someone grieving. Someone questioning whether they have what it takes to start over. Someone who believes their best chapters are behind them. Because that's what Marcus's gift really was, wasn't it? Not the estate or the money, but the message that it's never too late to become who you were meant to be. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being part of this community. Thank you for letting me share stories that matter, stories that dig into the messy, beautiful complexity of being human. Subscribe if you haven't already. Like this video. Tell me where you're watching from. I love knowing this community spans the entire world. And remember, your greatest legacy isn't what you leave behind. It's who you become while you're here. It's the love you give freely. It's the courage you show when life asks you to start over. Until next time, take care of yourselves. And maybe, just maybe if you've been keeping secrets from someone you love, Ask yourself if they deserve the truth. Not someday. Now. 1 year after opening the Blackwood Legacy Foundation, I stood in the cave gallery, preparing for a small private ceremony. The first artist residency had concluded, and 6 talented creators were about to unveil work they'd made during their fellowship. Jasmine stood beside me, now the foundation's permanent director. She'd found her calling in this work, bringing Marcus's vision to life in ways even he probably hadn't imagined. "Mom," she said quietly as we waited for the guests to arrive, "I've been thinking about Dad's last video, about living boldly." "What about it?" "I think I'm ready to be bold about something." She took a deep breath. "I've met someone. Her name is Keisha. She's one of the marine biologists working on the Coastal Conservation Project." The way she said "her" carried weight, vulnerability, the same vulnerability Marcus had talked about in his final message. "And you're telling me because?" "Because Dad was right. Secrets hurt, even when they're kept out of fear. I don't want to hide who I am or who I love. Not anymore." I pulled my daughter close, my heart aching with pride and love. "Then bring her to dinner. Let me meet the woman who makes you bold." As the ceremony began and artists unveiled paintings, sculptures, and installations inspired by the land Marcus had protected, I thought about legacy again. Not the foundation or the conserved coastline or the rare earth minerals left unmined. The real legacy was this: Jasmine finding courage to live authentically, 6 artists creating from a place of freedom and inspiration, a coastline preserved for children not yet born, and me, standing in a cave filled with my artwork, finally reclaiming the artist I'd once been. Marcus had kept secrets, yes, but he'd also kept faith in me, in Jasmine, in the possibility of transformation even through grief. The forbidden estate had become hallowed ground. The secrets had become stories. The ending had become a beginning. And somewhere, in the crash of waves against ancient cliffs and the cry of seabirds overhead and the laughter of artists celebrating new creation, Marcus's love continued, endless and unbroken. The greatest inheritance of all,